40% of the country.
Seymour Hersh, Dick Cheney went to Saudi Arabia in November. Now, well, he went to Asia and then showed up suddenly, a surprise visit both to Pakistan and Afghanistan, and supposedly there was a attempted assassination, a bombing outside the base where he was. What is Cheney doing right now?
Oh, how do I know?
You seem to know a lot about a lot of things, no, especially around Dick Cheney.
No, I just know. Well, you know, I think he's the horse. I don't think there's always every 2 weeks there's a story in some newspapers saying he's lost power. I don't think so. I think he still runs things. I think if Rice is going to do anything, attend some meeting, some ambassadorial minister level meeting, it's only done with Cheney's approval. But of course that's just my heuristic thought.
And the latest news yesterday of the U.S. will be involved in direct negotiations with Iran and Syria?
Our definition of negotiations with Iran are very interesting. Our definition of a negotiating offer with Iran, remember there was a big flurry last year where we announced we would sit down at the table with Iran. Well, here's the way we put it. The issue for us is Iran is continuing to do nuclear research, and presumably whether or not they have a bomb, they're learning the techniques of making a weapon. And this is probably absolutely accurate. That's what they are learning. They're increasing the number of centrifuges they're running, et cetera, albeit with a lot of problems. And they're nowhere down near a weapon. But they're going for that process. So our position is that we will negotiate with Iran on that issue, on what they're doing in terms of nuclear development, only after they stop all nuclear development. So our bargaining position is we will not negotiate with you about what you're doing in terms of the nuclear development until you stop it. I mean, it is a total non-starter. And so I just am very skeptical about anything that's going to come out of any ministerial or subsequent meeting with the Iranians and the Syrians. I don't think the President of the United States and the Vice President want to leave office with things as they are right now.
You have always said you're afraid of President Bush as a lame duck president. Do you seriously think, I know you've been writing about it for a year in the New Yorker magazine, that he will attack Iran? Or do you see Israel attacking Iran?
No, Israel would never attack Iran. The best they could do is fire some missiles from the Indian Ocean. They have submarines with cruise missiles. No, that's not nearly enough. What's a small attack? A major attack, if you're going to do one, would have to come from the Americans. And Cheney has said internally he'll never let the Israelis do it. It's much better if we do it. But that I feel reasonably rational, I can say with some confidence. I can't say anything at all about what the president will or will not do. There are people inside the military. There's two aircraft carrier groups in the region right now. One's inside the Straits of Hormuz, which is that narrow straits where all of the oil passes through, going from the Middle East to Asia. And it's such a narrow channel that the U.S. Navy never even had a carrier go into the Straits of Hormuz because they're accompanied by 5 or 6 ships, destroyers, etc. And they don't have much maneuverability. They're very vulnerable to attack. And I'm told by people that there will be 2 more carriers sent this spring to relieve the 2 ships, fleets that are there now. And they will all be kept there for a little while. One off Oman, one in what they call the North Arabian Sea, Nas, one in the Indian Ocean, and one in the Straits of Hormuz. And once those 4 groups are out there, you're talking about an enormous amount of firepower. And it's at that point some people inside the military are worried about what the president might or might not do. I don't think he's going to do anything next year. It's an election year. And he's got to spend, he's not an old man. He doesn't want to be hated by the Republican Party all of the rest of his life. He's damaging it enough now, but in 2008 he's got to be careful. He's got to give the Republicans a shot at the presidency. And the way he's carrying on right now, he's helping the Democrats. So if he does it, it'll be this year. And, people worry about spring. And if he is in a position where he can authorize something on short notice, and you could with carriers all over the place, there's an awful lot of planes. The carrier squadrons have destroyers with cruise missiles that can fire. You can hit a lot of things in Iran if you want. The Iranians, I should tell you, are absolutely preparing for the worst. They've been digging holes. They've been digging what they call bunkers for their leadership, survival bunkers, and not in Tehran, outside. We know what they're digging. They're going to move the leadership to underground facilities. The Russians did the same thing during the Cold War, and we, of course, have the same thing, underground bunkers to protect our leaders. They're reinforcing a lot of buildings. They've moved most of the sensitive nuclear stuff, I think, out of the buildings where we think they are into probably into Tehran, in the very heavily, densely populated areas. So if we're going to bomb nuclear facilities, we're going to have to take a chance of an awful lot of collateral damage. And there's also the possibility, this is always raised, that all of this is just some big send-up, that people like me are being used, stories are planted that this is all part of a propaganda operation by the White House to put pressure on Iran. The only argument against that is, of course, it's not going to work, and the Iranians will never back off.
Seymour Hersh, what about the report in the Times of London that says 5 or 6 U.S. generals will resign if the U.S. attacks Iran?
What paper was that? That's of interest to me. Was it the Telegraph?
I think it was the Times of London.
Well, you know, it depends. The Telegraph, I always think, have tremendous intelligence about the Americans. It's a conservative paper there that does a great job. A year ago, I wrote that officers are willing to resign inside, high-level officers inside the Joint Chiefs, on the basis of the fact that the White House refused to take out the nuclear option in the plans that were going on. And the military won that battle. The president agreed to a new plan that did not include a nuclear option, and so that didn't happen. So the only thing I know is that there is a precedent for it. When you talk about resignations in the Joint Chiefs, what you're really talking about are not public resignations. You're talking about early retirements. People just say, I'm out of here. Nobody goes public. They just don't do that in the middle of a war, because it's just not seen as a senior officer as something you want to do to your troops on the ground. You don't do something to walk away from them. So it would be, my understanding is, if they did leave, it would be quiet.
Seymour Hersh, I want to thank you very much for being with us.
No sweat.
Thank you. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist with the New Yorker magazine. His latest piece that has caused such a stir, the explosive findings in this, called The Redirection. Is the administration's new policy benefiting our enemies in the war on terrorism? This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. When we come back, global warming. Stay with us.